Listens to the River is a hunter, an explorer, a scout, or at least one day he will be. Soon he will travel far and wide, but here, beside the River of Souls, he is home. Before him the long desert reeds parted effortlessly, and beneath his feet flowed the liquid spirits of his ancestors. A breeze rippled across the surface, cool wavelets lapping at his ankles. He paused and felt the pebbles of the riverbed under his bare soles. Gila-lurk broods were known to inhabit these waters, so every step carried a risk. At the height of summer, the river barely reached ankle height, making it easier to spot the menacing creatures, if you saw them in enough time. Crouching low, he waited for the voices ahead to resume. Whenever the distant conversation fell silent, he froze too, moving only when the familiar rich sonorous voice rose again. Nevertheless, he kept low, careful not to let his head rise above the reeds. He had little experience of stalking men, so he imagined he was hunting mule deer. Broken shale shifted between his hardened toes, while dust-coloured reeds whispered across his fingers. He closed his eyes and let the breeze wash over his face. His thoughts drifted far away, to the vast deserts of the north and south, and the forlorn ruins of the western cities. The east, however, remained a mystery to him. Other tribes, friend and foe alike, fell silent. Despite this, the elders refused to send emissaries into the lands where the sun rose, or at least he had been forbidden from doing so. No doubt his youth counted against him, but one day he would be a tribal seeker. A wiry frame and a light step all but marked him for the role once he came of age. The young tribal, however, had dreams of becoming a mighty warrior clad in mantis gauntlets, vanquishing the enemies of the Painted Rock. The voice ahead was clearer now, cutting through his thoughts. It spoke words that listeners to the river neither understood nor cared for. Through the reeds, the rocky red embankment loomed ahead, climbing into the cliffside above. He traced the sound behind the nearest jutting slab of sedimentary rock. One silent climb over the ridge, and he would be ready to strike. He set his coarse hands against the stone and hauled himself up in a single, fluid motion. Resisting the urge to grunt with effort, he steadied himself on the natural footholds of the outcrop. Now you could see the distinctive brimmed hat, beneath which came those soothing tones. She would be sitting beside him, out of sight, patient and studious as usual during the endless lectures. Now was the time. In 2 swift movements, he leapt across the outcrop, vaulting over the figure below. Twisting mid-air, he landed hard on his feet, and unleashed an almighty war cry that rang through the gorge. Sitting against the rock, with a pre-war book resting upon his crossed legs, the man let out a startled cry. He flinched, hurling the book upwards, only for it to drop straight back onto his brimmed hat, pulling it down over his eyes. Listens to the river roared again, this time with laughter as the man readjusted his hat. A babble of half-formed curses followed beneath it. Composing himself, he rose slowly to his feet and braced against the ruby rock. He addressed his assailant in a measured tone. "By the cross, must you do that, River?" As the man collected his book from where it had fallen upon the ground, listened to the river glance around. The man sat alone. "She is not here," River stated, dumbfounded. His face fell at the realization. Then he felt a touch on the crown of his head. Rain? It had been months since the last acidic downpour. River searched the sky for clouds. Then something tapped his head again. A squeal of laughter echoed from the rocky cliff above. He looked up to find a girl peering over a ledge, beaming as she clapped. Her applause echoed down through the gorge to create a chorus of mockery. River sighed, deflated by his defeat. "I saw you from the river bend," she shouted down. "Hold on, I'm coming down," she chuckled. "You never miss his lectures," River called back. "I was listening, but from afar," she insisted. She descended with easy grace, and moments later they stood face to face. "Oh, don't be disappointed, River. You may be a good hunter, but I know you too well." He gave her a faint smile. "And besides, I have the smarts." She twirled her braided hair, cocked her head, and looked off into the distance, baiting him. River reacted at once, scooped her up, and slung her over his shoulder. She shrieked as he playfully threatened to toss her into the river to join the ancestors. Okay, cut it out, you two," the man interjected. "A hunter and an academic. I don't know who to fear more. Oh, for some peace and quiet." River released the girl, setting her back on her feet. "Peace, Peter. This is peace." He spread his arms wide and turned to the heavens. "The land of the Painted Rock. A peaceful paradise in the waste." "A paradise, maybe. But peaceful?" Peter questioned as he packed his satchel. "Your people have much to learn about peace." "Have you come to listen, River?" the girl asked. "You will learn something about the land beyond, perhaps. The people of the NCR and the followers." River spread his narrow arms once again, feigning boredom and letting out an exaggerated yawn. The girl playfully struck him in response. "Well, if you haven't come to learn, make yourself useful and please carry my bag back to the cave. It's getting late, and you should head back soon." River accepted the petty challenge to salvage his pride and prove his masculine prowess, hauling the rucksack over his shoulder. Peter cracked a smile at his small victory. "Yes, it is time for the night meal," said the girl. "Next time, River, maybe call ahead so I don't risk dying an early death," Peter pleaded, more in hope than expectation. "You are smart, Peter, not strong. You can learn much from me, like how to be brave and fear nothing." The girl rolled her eyes at the boast as River bounded up the trail, which wound its way further up the cliff top. The girl followed, and Peter limped along at the rear. The last light of afternoon was fading as evening crept over the wastes. The day's heat softened, and soon the cactus dodgers would be calling into the night. As they climbed, the mesa across the gorge revealed itself. Mute fruit trees and cacti scattered across its face, and beyond it, their village. Peter, however, soon slowed and buckled from the gentle climb, finding a boulder to rest on, about a third of the way to the summit. He removed his rancher hat and wiped the sweat of his brow with his sleeve. Taking a breath, he rubbed at his injured leg. The girl, noticing his brief absence, turned and saw where the weary traveller had paused to rest. Time was catching up with him, or perhaps his injury was. She placed a hand on River's arm to stop him, and they both retraced their steps to where Peter had paused. "Sorry," he panted. "I'm no spring chicken anymore." The two teens exchanged puzzled looks. "It's a phrase. Chickens are... I'm not entirely sure what they are, but they're tasty." Peter set his cap back on his balding head. The girl's face fell as she considered his condition, while River turned his attention to the struggling leg. "Does it hurt?" the young tribal asked. Peter sighed. "Nothing serious, just tender. But mask the pain, right? That's what the elders would say. If I were there, Peter, you would what, River? Fight the rat scorpion with your bare hands?" Peter didn't raise his voice. His tone was quiet, almost forlorn. "I apologize. I get ornery when it acts up. Remember, there are far worse things out in the waste than scorpions and Gila lurks. Bravery is a virtue, but out there in the wasteland, it's often accompanied by stupidity." River broke eye contact, already bracing for another lecture. The girl rounded on River, her frustration finally boiling over. "Peter is right, River. There is much to learn about the lands and waste beyond. Someday we'll have to leave this place." "Why? Our lands are safe from the other tribes. They fear us and we fear no one. We make too many enemies. It will be up to our best scouts to seek out safer lands, such as you." "I do not want to be some lowly seeker. I want to be a brave warrior. And join your mother and father in the river, is that it? What's eating you? Maybe it's time to grow up. For both of us." River studied her solemn demeanour for a moment, then cast a look across the ravine. The girl shook her head and continued on alone. Peter stood and rested a hand on River's shoulder. "She cares for you. You need to look out for each other. She's the future of this tribe." He hobbled after the girl while River stood motionless for a moment. He knew what was expected of him. He liked to hunt, scout and explore, making him a natural candidate for a seeker within the tribe. But the Painted Rock were proud people, bound by tradition and a long line of brave warriors that River longed to join. The elders claimed they had never been defeated in battle, nor driven from their lands along the River of Souls. This river was his home, his family, yet now there were rumours, strange tales of another tribe from the east, mighty, terrifying. The Painted Rock would fight if needed, but they were also pragmatists. The sacred land meant nothing without the people who lived upon it. As the elders say, the lands may die, but its stewards must survive. Dusk fell as the trio reached Peter's cave. River seldom visited the place, preferring to maximize his time in the wilderness. Peter engaged what he called the generator, bringing light to the small grotto. A solitary bulb hung from the rocky ceiling, illuminated the hollow and revealing a bedroll and filled beside a table. Upon it stood a strange contraption that River didn't recognize, a box fitted with what looked like a window. Near the entrance was another table, littered with an assortment of strange objects. River set the bag down and instinctively picked up one of the unfamiliar devices, turning it over in his hands. Peter removed his neckerchief and hat, then lowered himself into a wicker chair with a heavy sigh. "So, Miss Walk Among the Stars, what have we learned today?" "How to be bossy," River interjected. "Tell me about Pascal's law," Peter continued, ignoring him. If pressure is applied to a confined fluid, then equal pressure is exerted throughout. Which means something small can move something big." Peter smiled, the corners of his eyes creasing. "What have you learned, Peter?" Stars asked in return. "I learned not to be afraid, that there is a time and place for everything." He exhaled and straightened. "All right, school time's over. You should both be getting back. It's late, and I want to avoid upsetting your elders again. Tomorrow I'll test you on the lessons from the week." River put down the strange object, still fascinated by it, and turned to follow Stars toward the entrance to the cave. "And I shall test you on my lessons," Stars responded excitedly. As she reached the mouth of the cave, she stopped dead. Her arm rose, pointing toward the horizon. "What is that?" she asked. "Is that fire?" Peter pushed himself up with effort and limped past River, coming to stand beside Stars. That was all the answer they needed. Smoke. Black smoke rose in the distance, thin, smouldering columns cutting into the darkening skyline, backlit by a vibrant moon and a warm glow at the base. "The village," Stars breathed, the words barely more than a whisper. River joined them, and the three of them stood frozen, watching the inferno unfold. Peter shook himself from the sight and limped back into the cave as fast as his leg would carry him. He threw open a footlocker and pulled out a hunting rifle. Both teens tore their eyes from the horizon and turned to Peter, watching his hurried movements. "Peter?" Stars said, her voice tight with worry. Peter snatched several rounds from the footlocker and chambered his rifle. He shuffled to the entrance, brushing past the two teenagers. "Stay here and don't move until I come back," he ordered. "Where are you going?" Stars called after him. Peter was already making his way down the trail. "Stay here," he shouted over his shoulder as he hurried into the dark. For what felt like an eternity, they obeyed, their eyes darting between Peter's fading figure winding down the trail and the growing plumes of smoke. Their eyes finally met. "Stars, what's happening?" "I don't know." "Should we follow?" He said not to. River felt the awful truth settled in. He spoke the words he had been trying to avoid. "The village. It's under attack. We should do something." "That can't be." Peter stood little chance alone, but River could not risk leaving Stars by herself. By now, the phalanx of warriors would be gathering to face the enemy, and River longed to be with them. To hide here now would be cowardice. The village was burning, the braves were fighting to the death, and even an outsider like Peter had gone to join the battle. "Come on," River motioned as he started after Peter. "He said for us to wait," Stars protested. "Then stay close to me." After a brief hesitation, Stars followed. Together they hurried down to the river basin, then pushed upstream toward the village. The river banks grew shallower, sloping gently into a floodplain, thick with mutefruit trees. Night had set in, and angry voices cut through the darkness. Peter's among them. They crept closer until they reached a clearing on the outskirts of the village. The smell of smoke was thick now, and beyond the copse of trees came a cacophony of screams. As they reached the dell, Stars pulled River sharply down into the nearby undergrowth. Torchlight flickered across the clearing, and Peter stood out at once, standing nearest to where they hid. His rifle was drawn, though not yet trained, on the torchbearer strangers, perhaps half a dozen, who had formed a semicircle around him. Each held something in their free hand, objects which River at first mistook in the dark for short wooden planks. "They're armed," Stars whispered. Firelight flashed against steel, and River saw them for what they were. Machetes, familiar weapons of the Painted Rock. These men were unlike any River had seen before. Skirts, leather chestplates, and helmets from the old world. He recognized them from the relics he had found scattered among the great roads that stretched beyond the sacred lands. The shouts rang out. Peter kept demanding to see the tribe's chief, while the strangers barked at him to drop his weapon. "We should do something." River's voice hardened. "There are too many," Stars said. One of the strangers shouted a single word, cutting short all further argument. "Decanus!" From the darkness at the far edge of the clearing, a man emerged and strode into the torchlight. He was dressed much like the others, but the feathers jutting from his helmet marked him as different, like the tail of the strange bird that Peter had once called a turkey. He carried no machete. Instead, one hand was encased in a massive metal glove, a brutal fist of steel. The man they called Decanus approached Peter, and the others fell silent. He stopped before him, lingering in silence before prowling around him, studying every detail. My name is Peter Lowell. Please, I must talk to the chief of the tribe." "What tribe?" the Decanus asked sharply. "The Painted Rock tribe." By now the Decanus had finished circling him and stood before Peter once more. "I know of no such tribe." Peter stammered, but held the man's gaze. They're the tribe you're enslaving." "There is no tribe with this name." He paused. "No longer." The Decanus moved in close until merely a breath separated them. "And you, Peter Lowell, who are you? A neighbour? Trader? Troublemaker? Or merely a dissolute?" I'm a friend of the tribe, a follower of the apocalypse." He unbuttoned his shirt and lifted the sleeve, revealing a tattoo on his wrist, a cross within the circle. He held it steady for the Decanus to see in the firelight. "The cross!" the Decanus exclaimed, turning to his men. "The dissolute wants the cross." "Yes, the cross. I'm from the same place as your leader, the one you call Kaiser. If I can just talk to the chief, we can avoid bloodshed." The Decanus spun back sharply. "No, not dissolute. A profligate. Blasphemous. He asked for the cross, and we shall oblige." The Decanus drove his power fist down hard onto Peter's trigger hand. With an explosive crack, The hydraulic piston snapped forward, causing the rifle to spin away into the dirt. Peter cried out, stumbling backwards, clutching his mangled hand. Stars clutched River's arm with her left hand and sobbed into her right. She held tightly and didn't let go. Two men seized Peter by the arms and dragged him deeper into the darkness, towards the smoke and screams. Absolutum dominum, the Decanus cried, raising his fist to the sooty sky. The men answered with a roar of approval. True to Caesar, they chanted, marching towards the burning village. Stars wept silently, but anger burned in River's chest. Stay here, he whispered. What are you doing? I'm going to get Peter. Stars tightened her grip once more. You are stupid, they will kill you. River tore himself free and fell backwards into the brush. He shot Stars a hard look, and slipped away around the edge of the clearing. By the time he had reached the far end of the glade, the village was only a stone's throw away. Looking back, he caught the sight of a figure standing in the dark. He squinted, thinking for a moment the Stars had followed him. Then River caught the outline of the feathered headdress and realised the Decanus had remained behind. He was crouched over the undergrowth, near where River and Stars had been moments before. Dread seized him. He realised then that the Decanus must have heard his fall during his struggle with Stars. He prayed she had fled in time, but his heart sank at the image of her still cowering in the brush, seconds from discovery. River looked once toward the village, then steeled himself and stepped out from the undergrowth. At the rustle of movement, the Decanus turned at once and locked eyes with him. River advanced a few paces before stopping. Now he could see the stranger's face clearly. A deep scar traced a jagged line from brow to cheek across his weathered skin, an old wound carved into bone. His expression brightened, and the Decanus sank onto his haunches, reducing his frame down to the height of the boy as he studied him. River clenched his fist, but held his ground. The Decanus curled his metal-clad hand, beckoning him closer. Come, defend your honour. River did not move, stoking his anger, as the warriors of Painted Rock did before battle. The Decanus' expression darkened as he rose to his feet. Or am I mistaken? Are you merely the frightened runt of the litter? River broke. Before the taunt had settled, River lunged. He unleashed all he had, blow after blow hammering into the Decanus' exposed face. Up close he could smell the blood, sweat and smoke cling to the man. He threw a dozen wild punches, eyes clenched shut, bewildered that his foe had neither struck back nor even flinched. Then it came, an almighty blow. The Decanus' mighty fist drove into his stomach like a hammer, hurling him backwards into the earth. River lay broken and gasping, every breath a fight. The Decanus loomed above him, weak in body, but your spirit is strong. He seized River by his tangled hair and dragged him from the clearing. River struggled weakly against the grip, casting frantic glances back, searching for any sign of Stars. His scalp burned where the Decanus gripped his hair, his body scraping over the jagged ground. A tree root snagged his leg and twisted it hard. He cried out in pain, but the sound died in his throat as a searing heat surged through him. A great pyre blazed only feet from him, throwing wild firelight across the darkness. The stench of smoke was joined by another smell, one River had never known before. He twisted as best he could, the flames rising like monsters into the night. Then he heard a familiar voice, ragged with pain. To his right, Peter screamed in agony as they lashed him in place and nailed him to a cross. There were others too, including the elders, who had met the same fate, moaning and pleading for mercy as crosses lined the central plaza. Behind them, the Hall of Elders and the market were turning to embers, consumed by fire. The pungent stench thickened, turning River's stomach. He followed it to his left and found the source, a burning pile of Painted Rock braves. Their souls rose without right or honour, cast into the sky and severed forever from their ancestors. He prayed they had died in battle before the fire claimed them. Then the Decanus let go, and River clumpled hard into the dirt. Dazed, he forced himself upright, and found himself surrounded by the tribe's boys, from infants to adolescents. Their faces were wet with tears, wide with terror, all now looking to him for answers. River scanned the shattered village, rows of crosses, blackened husks of homes, enemy warriors butchering those who had resisted, and dragging away the young and the feeble. A warrior dragged a young girl River knew, her screams cutting through the chaos, and shoved her into a separate line of captives. River saw then that it was made up entirely of women and girls. The surviving tribe members were being herded into separate groups by gender. River rose slowly to his feet, pain still aching through his abdomen from the metal fist, and moved toward the other group. A brutal blow slammed into his back and dropped him to his knees. The assailant barked for him to stay where he was, dragging his head down and forcing his face into the dirt. Once satisfied his commands had been obeyed, he let River go and turned back to watch the young males, who writhed and trembled in fear, their cries rising into the chaos, but none resisted. His spirit broken, River wept into the dirt, then rolled onto his back, sobbing openly. Overhead, a star-filled sky was swallowed by black smoke. He called out to the heavens for his friend.